Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a really insightful look at what it's like to be a young person navigating the world. It's drawn from this publication called Ragazzi che amano vivere.
Which, yeah, translates to young people who love living. And it's not like an academic study. It's more a collection of reflections, speaking right to the experience of growing up, almost like exploring a map of adolescence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our mission here in this deep dive is to explore these reflections. We want to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising facts about these really common experiences. Hopefully help you feel a bit more informed, maybe see things, I don't know, in a new light.
Right. We'll be unpacking the big themes from the text, everything from reading, friendships, family stuff, school pressure, social media, figuring out who you are, first love, all the big ones.
Fitting in?
Fitting in, yeah. And looking ahead to the future, too.
Okay, let's dive right in. The source, interestingly, starts with something maybe you wouldn't immediately think of as a survival tool for those years, reading.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is how it's framed, not just, schoolwork. It calls reading a key, a door, even a safe place when things feel chaotic.
That idea of a safe place, that really hits home. The source says, when you read, you're not actually alone anymore. You kind of step into other worlds, meet characters.
It even mentions J.K. Rowling, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Saying she was right, that books really are these sort of magical portals.
And it's not just escapism.
No, not at all. The text really emphasizes the cognitive benefits. It describes reading like a gym for your brain.
A gym for the brain, I like that.
Yeah, it helps you focus better, trains your mind to connect ideas, think more deeply, imagine.
So it's active, not passive.
Very active, builds mental muscle.
Yeah.
And it goes deeper, too. The source highlights how reading helps you understand emotions, both your own and other people's.
How does it do that? That's interesting.
Well, it points to specific books like The Fault in Our Stars, All the Blood We Share, and it notes their power to make you feel things deeply. But the key is, by feeling it through the characters, you feel less alone in your own emotions. It says these stories make you feel truly alive.
Wow. And I love how the source connects reading to courage.
Yeah, it asks, how do stories inspire bravery? It mentions Augie and Wonder as an example.
Right.
Reading his journey might make you think, okay, if he can handle that, maybe I can face my own stuff.
That makes sense.
It also makes a great point about language. Books give you more words. New ways to actually, articulate what's going on inside when you don't have the words yourself.
Like finding a translator for your own feelings.
Exactly. And the source really speaks from the heart here. It says books genuinely provide courage. It mentions classics like The Catcher in the Rye, and also maybe lesser known ones like The Art of Being Fragile, stories about feeling lost but finding strength.
Okay, so boiling it down, what's the main takeaway the source gives us on reading?
I think the core insight is this. When you're feeling down or confused or maybe angry, picking up a book that speaks to you isn't just escaping. It can be a really powerful, active first step towards, finding your balance again.
It's an active step. I like that framing.
Yeah, and building on that, navigating the world with others. The source moves into friendships, and it suggests they require this specific skill, the art of flexible friendship.
Flexible friendships.
Yeah.
What does the source mean by flexible?
It means basically avoiding really rigid rules or expectations about what a friend has to be like. Being too strict, the source warns, can actually make you miss out on some amazing, unexpected connections.
Because people surprise you.
Totally. The ones who add the most might not fit the mold you had in mind.
So it's about being open.
Open, yeah, but also discerning. Flexibility isn't just like accepting anything and everything. It's described more as learning to observe people, really listen, and then decide what feels right for you. It uses this analogy of learning to swim in a river. You can't control the current, right? But you learn how to move with it, how to navigate.
That adaptability sounds like a real strength, especially then.
The source frames it exactly that way. Adaptability is strength in a world that's always changing. Rigidity, though, that leads to breaking. And being totally closed off just leads to loneliness.
So what guides you then in being flexible but discerning, according to the source?
It puts a lot of weight on instinct. That little voice inside, Growing up involves learning to trust how someone makes you feel. If being around someone consistently leaves you feeling drained or nervous or insecure, that's a sign.
Or red flag.
Yeah. But if you feel calm, accepted, like you can genuinely be yourself, that's a green light. That points towards a real connection.
Okay, but what if you've been hurt? Doesn't your instinct then tell you to just build walls?
That's a great point. And the source addresses it directly. It says instinct needs training. Disappointment should teach you about healthy boundaries, sure, but it shouldn't make you build walls so high that you're trapped inside them. Learning to give people new chances, when your heart genuinely feels ready, that's presented as a really vital part of emotional growth.
And it ties back to the idea that even tricky relationships can teach you something.
Yes. The text contrasts chosen solitude, which can be fine, with the burden of unchosen loneliness. It argues that relationships, even the imperfect ones, they nourish us somehow. Good friends teach you things, sometimes through their mistakes even. And being able to accept that others aren't perfect, the source calls that a sign of real emotional intelligence.
So if we were to distill the core idea of flexible friendships from this source.
I think the core insight is true flexibility in friendship means having the strength to trust your gut, look closely, forgive if you can, or walk away if you need to. But always, always staying true to yourself in the process.
That flows really naturally into another complex relationship the source tackles.
Yeah.
Communicating with parents. It talks about that very real teenage need for space and freedom.
Yeah, and how that often clashes with parents' fears. The publication describes how hard it can feel to talk to parents sometimes, feeling judged or not heard or controlled. And how that often leads teens to just stop sharing, to close off.
And the source points out that silence can arguably backfire, right? It can make things worse.
Definitely. It fuels misunderstanding, suspicion, sadness, really on both sides.
Yeah.
And it offers this interesting insight into parents' reactions. That may be the control, the strictness, the anger. It often comes from a deep fear of losing connection, not from hate or not loving you.
But it doesn't feel like that when you're the teenager.
Absolutely not. It can feel harsh and really unfair. The source calls the whole dynamic a minefield.
That feels very accurate. A minefield.
Spot on. And it suggests ways to navigate it that aren't just shouting matches.
Like what?
Like calmer strategies, maybe asking directly, can you just listen for a minute without interrupting? Or instead of demanding freedom, asking for trust, phrasing it differently.
Why is that so hard, though? Just asking to be listened to.
Well, the source kind of suggests maybe it's because nobody really teaches us how to do that.
Right. How to communicate calmly when things are heated.
Exactly. Neither side. So we fall into these old patterns, blame, conflict, shutting down.
And there's always that tension, isn't there? Wanting independence, but deep down still needing some guidance.
The text totally gets that. Parents aren't perfect. Teens aren't perfect. Finding a balance is part of growing up. And it really highlights that the effort to reconnect matters more than finding the perfect words. Even a small gesture, a text message, just showing you're willing to try talking again.
Yeah.
That can make a huge difference.
So what's the ultimate goal here for the parent-teen dynamic, according to the source?
The core insight seems to be about transformation, moving the relationship from what feels like a war into more of an alliance. A bond built on finding that tricky balance between freedom and respect, independence and love, creating something that actually supports growth,
From war to alliance. That's a really powerful image.
Yeah. And moving to another area that causes a lot of stress for young people, school anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
The source really dives into this feeling, describing it as this daily fear of having to prove yourself constantly. And it's often hidden, right? Behind this mask of looking like you've got it all together.
It completely nails that inner voice, that critic. The one linking your whole self-worth to your grades.
Yeah.
That if you mess up this test, you're just not good enough voice.
Ugh, yeah. And it points out all the sources of pressure, sometimes parents, even if they don't mean to. Teachers, the school system itself, and definitely comparing yourself to your peers.
But the source says the core fear isn't just about the bad grade itself.
Right. Underneath it all is that fear of not being enough. Not smart enough, not capable enough, just unable to measure up.
And that anxiety has real consequences.
Oh, absolutely. Studying feels heavy, like you're full of doubt. You review things but don't feel confident. And that awful feeling of your mind just freezing during a test, even when you actually know the answers.
The source mentions the physical side too, doesn't it? Like insomnia, stomach aches.
Headaches, yeah. And the shame that comes with it, feeling like you're weak because you're struggling so much.
But that's where the source offers a different perspective.
Exactly. It makes a crucial point. Feeling anxiety doesn't mean you are weak. It probably means you're holding way too much inside. That you need different ways to cope.
Like what?
Talking to someone, maybe changing how you study, even just remembering to breathe more deeply. And maybe most importantly, judging yourself less harshly.
It frames managing this pressure as just a really key part of growing up.
Yeah, learning to accept that mistakes happen, understanding that one bad grade, one test doesn't define who you are. The source highlights that real success isn't about never failing. It's about the courage to keep going when things are hard. Because grades can't measure your effort, can they? Or your commitment, or the internal battles you're fighting.
It even throws in that kind of hopeful idea about future schools, maybe measuring things like heart and creativity too.
Wouldn't that be something? Yeah. So, what's the key takeaway on school anxiety here?
I think the core insight is true self-worth isn't built on getting perfect results. It's built on that slow, sometimes scary process of learning to trust yourself step by step, even on the bad days.
That trust in yourself, that ties right into the next theme. Figuring out who your real friends are versus just, company. The source talks about that feeling of loneliness even when you're physically with people.
That disconnect.
Yeah, which often means there's no real connection there. No trust, no real listening, no honesty.
And it acknowledges how tough it is to find those real connections when you're a teen. Because, as the source says, so many people are wearing masks to fit in.
Right. Laughing at things that aren't funny, following trends just 'cause, saying yes when they want to say no. And all those masks make it super hard to tell who's actually being real, who's truly there with you.
And the source stresses that trust isn't instant.
No way. It's built slowly. Takes time, patience, and vulnerability. Which is scary, right? Especially if you've been hurt before. There's that fear of opening up again.
Definitely.
But it also warns if you build your walls too high because of that fear, you end up trapping yourself, feeling alone, even in a crowd.
So what are the signs of a real friend, according to the source?
Well, they don't judge your mistakes harshly. They don't vanish when things get tough or you're feeling down. And they definitely don't laugh about you behind your back.
The source emphasizes something really foundational here too, right?
Yeah.
About being a friend to yourself first.
Absolutely critical. It makes the point that if you can accept yourself, you're less likely to settle for empty relationships just to avoid being alone. It even says sometimes being truly alone is better than being with fake company.
Yeah, there's that shift, isn't there, when you realize that being liked by absolutely everyone isn't the main goal.
Exactly. The source talks about that moment you realize being truly seen for who you are is way more valuable.
Even if it means you only have one or two people like that.
One or two who really listen, who laugh with you, who can just sit in silence comfortably.
Yeah, the source stresses that real connection needs truth, authenticity, not just numbers. And it offers some comfort too. If you're feeling alone right now, maybe it means you're actually learning what really matters. You're learning to tell the difference between the superficial stuff and genuine connection. Inner light, it calls it.
So the core message about finding true friends.
The core insight is genuine connections are found slowly, often when you least expect it. And the biggest sign, being with them makes you feel more like, well, your authentic self.
That leads us right into maybe the biggest question of all for young people. Who am I? The source really dives into that confusing feeling during adolescence when everything just seems to be changing. Yeah, it frames adolescence as this time of massive transformation. You're pulling away from childhood, from your parents' definitions. You're actively looking for your place in the world, and that search, it naturally brings confusion, a sense of not having a clear direction.
But the source says that confusion isn't a bad thing.
No, quite the opposite. It argues that doubt isn't just normal, it's actually necessary for growth. It contrasts that with the pressure people feel to have it all figured out right now,
Right.
which can lead to either grabbing onto a false identity just for security or feeling totally inadequate because you don't have the answers.
So the truth, as the source sees it, is that identity isn't some fixed thing you just find one day.
Exactly. It's a journey, lived day by day, built through experiences, mistakes, discoveries. You absolutely do not need all the answers at 16. Or 26, for that matter.
What do you need then, according to the source, on this journey?
Courage. The courage to listen to that quiet inner voice, even when it's uncertain. Even when the outside world is shouting conflicting messages at you.
And the outside world shouts pretty loudly. The source mentions social media, school, society.
All pushing you to have a defined style, a clear vision, a big dream right now. But the source gently reminds you, hey, even adults get lost sometimes. They rediscover themselves. It normalizes not knowing who you are right now. It suggests that feeling means you're actually brave enough to be asking the important questions.
So the path isn't really about finding a final answer. It's more about the process.
Yes, exactly. The source describes feeling whole as this ongoing process, making choices that align with that inner voice, building self-respect, becoming more self-aware, striving for authenticity.
And the fundamental message underneath it all.
The core insight is, even if you don't know who you are yet, the source is crystal clear. You are already uniquely someone, right now.
That's a really powerful validation.
Yeah. And speaking of the outside world and its pressures,
Mm.
the source takes on social media directly, asking that question, is it a filter or is it truth? It describes social media as this window that looks open, but often it's more like a curated display case, just the highlights.
And the effect of that, the source says, is often this silent comparison.
Totally. You see everyone else's polished moments and you feel inadequate, not pretty enough, happy enough, popular enough.
Mm.
And it really points to the hidden reality, suggesting that behind those perfect pictures there might be tears, arguments, emptiness. Nobody posts the messy stuff, the source basically says.
It doesn't hold back on the potential downsides.
Not at all. It calls it a potential trap for self-esteem,
Mm.
driving people to chase likes, measure their worth by followers, use filters until they barely look like themselves.
But it's not all negative. It frames it as a tool.
Exactly. The source is careful there. Social media itself isn't inherently good or bad. It's a tool. Its impact depends entirely on how you choose to use it.
And there's positive potential.
Definitely. Using it for genuine self-expression, sharing real ideas, maybe finding meaningful connections with people who get you.
So the key is using it consciously, mindfully.
Yes. The source suggests asking yourself some tough questions. Why am I actually posting this? Who am I following? And how do their posts make me feel? Am I living my life, or am I just curating content about my life?
And finding balance is vital.
Hugely emphasized by the source. Taking breaks, stepping away from the screen, intentionally engaging with the real world around you, grounding yourself.
What's the final word from the source on navigating this digital landscape?
The core insight seems to be, being online doesn't automatically mean losing yourself. You can be connected without becoming dependent. Because the strongest light, the most real you, is internal. It doesn't need a filter.
That's a fantastic reminder. Okay, let's shift to something that touches almost everyone, especially young people, experiencing it for the first time. When love hurts.
Yes. The source talks about the magic of first love, absolutely. But it's also really honest about the significant pain it can cause. It calls it a gentle storm.
A gentle storm. Yeah. It acknowledges that deep, often invisible mark that first heartbreak leaves, whether it's, unrequited love or a breakup.
Oh, and it speaks right to that feeling of being misunderstood. When adults maybe dismiss it, like, oh, it's just a crush.
Right. Minimizing it.
But the source validates how intense first love feels, and how losing it can feel like losing a part of yourself. It can lead to doubting your own worth, fearing you'll never find love again.
But even in that pain, the source finds value, finds lessons.
Yes. It emphasizes the growth that comes from heartbreak. You understand yourself better, you get clearer on what you actually want, and maybe more importantly, what you don't want in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Your heart learns to protect itself, the source says. But the trick is learning to do that without completely shutting down.
Finding that balance again.
Exactly. Learning that real love means walking alongside someone but still being fully yourself.
And healing isn't instant.
The source is very reassuring about that. Healing takes time, but time does allow for healing. It encourages self-care during that painful period, learning to set healthy boundaries, and reminding yourself that real love, authentic love, it welcomes you, it builds you up, it doesn't intentionally hurt you.
So if you're going through that, the source wants you to hear.
The core insight. You are definitely not alone in feeling that heartbreak. A broken heart can heal. It can actually grow stronger, become more ready for the right kind of love later. And it's okay not to rush it. That pain is like a passage leading towards brighter days, towards smiling again.
That's such a hopeful message. Another really significant pressure this source digs into is that intense desire to just be like everyone else.
Oh, huge in adolescence. That need to fit in, the fear of being different, being left out.
And this pressure, the source explains, often leads people to change themselves, to try and please others.
Yeah. Saying yes when you mean no, forcing a laugh, going along with the group, even when it feels wrong inside.
And the source points out that peer pressure isn't always loud demands.
Right. Often it's much quieter. It whispers through looks, little jokes, just the fear of being judged.
And it starts small, doesn't it?
Yeah, maybe just dressing like the group, talking like them, even starting to think like them. And the source says each little compromise feels like chipping away a piece of your true self.
It doesn't shy away from the harder choices either, mentioning things like smoking, drinking, even bullying.
Done sometimes just to feel accepted, and leaving you with that really bitter feeling of living like a copy, not the original.
But then the source presents a turning point, a really brave action.
Yes. Learning to say no, it's framed as incredibly brave. It means trusting your gut, protecting what makes you unique, honoring your own values. Fundamentally, it's choosing yourself.
In realizing that true respect doesn't demand conformity.
Exactly. The source is clear. Real respect means people accept you as you are. They don't ask you to change to fit their mold. And a big part of growing up is learning to tell the difference. Who values the real you and who just wants you to fit in.
And again, sometimes choosing solitude is better.
Yes. The source suggests being a little alone is way better than feeling totally lost in a crowd where you can't be yourself. It highlights how precious it is to find those people, even if it's just one or two, who accept your flaws, your quirks, and your honest no. That's real connection.
What's the powerful final thought from the source on fitting in?
The core insight is a reminder. You weren't born to be a copy. Being authentically yourself is your power. Strength lies in standing tall in who you are, even if that means standing out. And when you do that, others like you, they'll find you.
That really hits home. Okay, finally, the source turns towards facing the future and that anxiety that comes with the big question, what do you want to be? Especially when you're still figuring out who you are.
Yeah, it describes the future as this huge unknown space, full of possibilities but also unknowns. And that weight feels particularly heavy as school winds down and big choices are on the horizon.
The source really gets that quiet anxiety underneath it all.
Mm-hmm. The fear of making the wrong choice, disappointing people, ending up on the wrong path entirely. That wish for just like a clear sign pointing the way.
Right.
And this often leads to overthinking, comparing yourself to peers who seem to have it all planned out, feeling crushed by the pressure of time. The future feels scary because of all the adult responsibilities, looming job, living situation, being that adult self.
The source even mentions how people cope, like pretending they don't care.
Yeah, acting indifferent while inside the anxiety and doubt are churning. Can I really do this? What if I totally mess up?
But the source validates that fear. It doesn't dismiss it.
No, it says the fear is real, it's human. But it's not the end of the story. It reminds you nobody has all the answers, not even adults. They're still figuring things out too.
That's comforting.
And your future isn't set in stone by one decision you make right now. Life changes. You'll change.
So the uncertainty is okay. It's allowed.
More than okay. The source is really reassuring here. Doubt and uncertainty are normal companions. As long as they don't paralyze you, stop you from moving at all. It makes a point you don't need the whole map figured out. Just taking one step is enough to start building your path.
And maybe fear isn't always a stop sign.
That's a fascinating idea the source raises. That sometimes fear might actually be hiding your dreams, the things you desire, but haven't found the courage to pursue yet. So it encourages asking honest questions, noticing what genuinely sparks joy in you, what gives you energy, what makes you feel alive. Those are clues.
And the key isn't speed.
No, the core insight. Facing the future isn't about getting there first or having the perfect plan. It's about building trust in yourself, your feelings, your passions, that inner voice, and every single step on that winding road, even the hesitant ones, they're all building your unique story.
Wow. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Ragazzi che amano vivere, young people who love living, it's so clear this source just captures that intense, confusing, amazing whirlwind that is adolescence.
It really does. And it offers such powerful validation for those feelings we all have, feeling alone sometimes or different or like you don't quite belong. And it reframes those challenges, those doubts. They aren't roadblocks. They're necessary parts of the journey, that path of becoming, as it calls it. You're literally building the foundation for your future self.
The overall message feels incredibly resilient, that struggles aren't there to break you. They're chances to figure out who you really are.
Yeah, and strength, it says, often starts right there, in the moments when you feel hurt or out of place, or you just don't have the answers.
And there's such a strong current of self-compassion running through it all.
Definitely. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have it all figured out now. The focus, according to this publication, should be on learning to listen to yourself, being kind to yourself, accepting your own vulnerability. That takes courage.
That reminder, you are not alone, is just woven through everything. And asking for help. That's presented as a strength, not a weakness. A way to take care of the unique person you are.
And it highlights that spark, that inner light inside every young person, something that can't be extinguished. Even if you fall down, you can always get back up.
The core message echoing through it all is just so vital, isn't it? You matter.
You are important.
Your voice, your feelings, your experience, it deserves to be heard, honored.
And the encouragement is just to keep going, keep searching, keep asking questions, keep dreaming your own dreams. But remember to be gentle with yourself along the way. Life isn't a straight road,
Right.
but every step moves you forward. And every feeling is just a part of you asking to be understood.
So considering everything we've talked about today,
Hmm?
drawn from young people who love living, all these themes reading friendship, family, school, social media, identity, love, the future. Here's a thought to leave you with. What's maybe one small way you could lean into your own inner voice this week? Or take just one small step towards being more authentically you?